We're thrilled today to have an actor on for an interview with maybe the largest filmography of anybody we've ever talked to. You might know him from so many iconic roles in things such as The Empire Strikes Back, Harry Potter, Troy, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Game of Thrones, and a little movie that's celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, which is the James Bond film For Your Eyes Only, where he played the main villain, Christados. Julian Glover, so thrilled to have you on the show here today. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. It's midday for me, but it's not for you, I gather. Rather
no.
Yeah.
Being able to talk to a Bond villain will instantly wake us up.
Oh, I can wake you up if you want to.
Please do.
No, I won't do it. My voice is too big. And that's a good, very lucky thing with me, that my voice has held up. Quite a lot of my friends who are my age, and I'm very old now, have got into that sort of rather wheezy thing. And fortunately for the moment, mine holds up. So let's hope it long continues that way.
And hope for this interview.
Yeah.
We'll get you talking so much that it will just wane out by the end of it. Don't worry.
You know, just running through your filmography there, I mean, it's crazy. Ben and I are talking this past week, you know, we were telling people who were interviewing, they're like, oh, who are you interviewing? And you could name just one of those roles and people would say, okay, yeah, I know him from Game of Thrones. I know him from Empire Strikes Back and all these things. Where does For Your Eyes Only sort of rank among the many roles that I guarantee you probably get recognized for all the time?
Yeah, For Your Eyes Only was the first really big break into big movies. And it remains one of my favorite. My real favorite is Indiana Jones. That's an even better part than For Your Eyes Only. I've been terribly lucky in my life. I really have, because I'm primarily a theatre actor, and that's why I came into the business, to have that thing with an audience, which is a very live thing to have. The feeling in the theatre when you're talking to an audience is quite different from talking to a camera. Anyway, that's what I mostly am. But I managed to fit in, which is fantastic. All these, I've been in, I wouldn't say that I've starred in, I've been in over 70 movies, and they go on. I'm doing another one next week. I do a lot of experimental films, young people coming up, learning how to be directors and all that. I do quite a lot of that, and which gives me great pleasure, because I know if I've got anything to say about anything which is in the least bit interesting, it will get passed on. That's part of my life's ambition, is to pass things on. Like I do a one-man show about in the theatre of the oldest poem in the English language, which is in the Anglo-Saxon. And it's called Beowulf, which is the name of the main character. And it's a tale of derring do and dragons and all those things. And it's taught as a university subject, and it's very dry. People hate it. And one of my objects with that is to bring it to life, make people go, oh, that's a great story. And but I've been doing that for over 15, 20 years now. And,
wow.
And I've done it all over the world. Have I done it in Oz? No, I haven't done it in Australia.
Still time.
I haven't done it.
Plenty of time.
No, I haven't done it in Canada either. I haven't done it in Canada. No, I haven't. Anyway, I'm just talking about the sort of things I like to do. And I say I'm terribly lucky to have got into all these fantastic big franchises. And one has followed another. The Indiana Jones, Star Wars, the Empire, was pure nepotism, absolutely nepotism. The first film had come out and we'd all been knocked sideways by it. We couldn't believe that they'd achieved what they'd achieved with that film. And from the very beginning, with those planes coming down between all those rocks, oh, fantastic. And then my next door neighbor was the executive producer on it. It's called Robert Watts.
Oh,
a lot
wow.
of aficionados will know of Robert Watts. And he was the executive producer on that. And he one day over the garden wall, literally next door. I was in the garden, and so was he, and he put his head over the fence. He said, we're doing the next Star Wars film. Oh, yeah. I said, do you want to be in it? I said, oh, well, yes, thanks. That'd be nice. It's not a very big part, but quite important. I said, that's fine. No, I'll do it. I'll do it. Thank you very much. So I went and did that one, which was 1 week of great fun, I have to say.
Yeah.
Not very well paid, I have to say, George Lucas. But it's made up for it later with conventions and things where I sell a lot of photos.
Yeah, it's kind of paid off eventually, 40 odd years later, maybe.
Then later on, they were making Indiana Jones, which again was executive producer was Robert Watts. And he rang me and said, there's a seriously good part going. It's the part of the German officer, the colonel officer in this episode of Indiana Jones. And so I went up for it and didn't get it. And oh dear, all right, win some, you lose some. And because I look quite good for German officers. Anyway.
Is that a good thing? Or?
I finally got home. When my agent rang me and said, well, you haven't got that. Michael Byrne's got that. Now, Michael Byrne, if you remember the film, has got the perfect face for that. Mm-hmm. I mean, absolutely. And he's a very good actor. And I said, oh, well, that's perfect. That's I don't mind losing it to him. That's great. He said, but however, they want to see you for Walter Donovan. And my wife came in and picked me up off the floor. And and so I had to go along and do a thing called an audition with something called an American accent. And all that. But I did it, and I got the part. And that again was through nepotism, through knowing someone. Great. So it's often it's not what you know, but who you know. But I think I acquitted myself quite well in both those roles, and so I wasn't unhappy about the nepotism. And nor was my bank balance.
That's the main thing, right?
Other films like Game of Thrones, which is not a film, of course, a series, as we all know. I had to do 4 auditions for that one.
Wow.
And different parts. And I only got that because someone who I know quite well, who now lives in the States, Roy Dotrice, had been cast in that part. And he's brilliant at it, very old man. And he got suddenly very ill. And they were within a week or so of shooting. And so they rang me as a stopgap. Would I do that? And I did that. But thank goodness, I mean, I feel all right about it because he got better. Thank goodness, because we feared for him. And he played a part himself in the later episodes of Game of Thrones. So I didn't feel too bad about it. But that was purely by chance. I mean, the whole of England was there auditioning for Game of Thrones. As you
I can imagine.
And mind you, at the beginning, we didn't know how wonderful it was going to be. We just thought this is another hot sci-fi series, rather interestingly set in the non-distant future or past or whatever it is. And we just thought, well, it's an interesting thing to do. Little did we know. And at the very beginning of it, I went and you can't stop me talking, I'm afraid.
That's why we've got you, Julian. That's what
we go for it.
we shot about a week of it, I suppose, sitting at the table and being the counsel and all that, and a few other little scenes. And I thought, this is no good. I'm just nothing. I'm just an old man with a beard. So I went to the writers and said, I really do want something more here. You know, and I said, it sounds very conceited, but I'm a better actor than this. And you know, and I had a dream that night. And the next day, the dream came true. I literally dreamt. They came to me and said, we've had this wonderful idea that actually you're phony. You're something in your private life and you're something in your public life. And your private life, you're a very vigorous old man, quite up to it, as we all know, and all sorts of other things. However, publicly, you play this old man card, which is a very useful thing for your political positions. And right, so they shot an episode to show that. They didn't go on about it during the series, but I knew inside myself that I was those things. So that really informed what I did. You wouldn't have seen anything different, but I then had something to work for. But a great disappointment happened on that, and I've told them so, and they know about it. Towards the end of the series, was it series 5? End of the series 5, I think it was. We were filming in Dubrovnik, and I had this wonderful scene where Tywin, Charles Dance, was fishing on the side of the water, and I came down with some old message, and he suddenly turned to me and said, "What's your game? What are you doing? What are you playing?" And I realized he sussed me out. So I say, "Yeah, absolutely." So I stop being all bent down. I stand up to my full height, and I explain what I'm doing, that I'm determined not to be one of those people who gets bumped off, and I want a proper funeral and be recognized for the work I've done. And he says, "Oh yeah, that's fair enough. So you can still carry my fish in," which I did. But that established me again as being a double person, and they cut the scene. And I was absolutely furious. And I said as a result of that, "I'm not going to do the last series." They said, "You've got to do the last series." I said, "I don't have to do the last series. I'm not contracted for it." And because I really didn't want to do it, because I felt terribly sidelined. All I was doing by the end was being ticked off by Cersei all the time. And that really didn't satisfy my thespian instincts. But anyway, eventually they said, "Well, you've got to be." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, we've got this wonderful scene for you." I said, "Can I see the scene?" No, of course you can't. You know how it is these days. They never let anything out. I said, "All right, well, goodbye." So eventually it was settled by a motorbike came around with a case in it, and inside were the sides of that scene, with written Julian Glover, secret, not to be divulged, all over it. And indeed, it was my death scene in Game of Thrones, which was a terribly good scene. And so I said, "Okay, I'll do this as long as you pay me for that particular episode. You pay me 3 times the money."
Wow.
And within, I don't know, an hour, they were back saying, "You're on." So
wow.
The proof of that is that if you don't want something badly enough, you'll probably get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a good message to have. I like that.
So I got that fantastic death scene, and I was well happy. It was a good shoot. Game of Thrones was a great shoot, and such great people, lovely people. The writers, and they're such lovely people. And the other actors, I mean, I'd known Charlie Dance, since Stratford-on-Avon in the early 70s. And so we've known each other that long. And meeting people like Peter Dinklage, it was such a pleasure, I mean, even I felt, I've been around a bit, but felt a great honor to be among those really fine actors. And we knew by the end of the first series, I remember going to going with my wife to the first showing of the first 2 episodes of the first series, which was a crew showing. And we went and we didn't know what to expect. I said, "I haven't got very much to do." That's all right. I know. And it started, I don't know if you've seen it, but it started with that white wall, and an enormous great wall for the north. And at the bottom, there's this little hole, out of which came some people with horses, and right at the bottom of the screen. And they came, and they hadn't gone any further than that when my wife and I involuntarily turned to each other and went, "Wow." And we knew from then it was going to be a fantastic series.
Great.
And it was.
Fantastic. Because it must be interesting. You sort of talk a lot about the roles that you've had before, and particularly the 3 main franchises that Colin mentioned there with Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and of course James Bond. Each of those franchises, when you appeared in, were well established at that point, of course. Obviously Empire Strikes Back was the sequel, but Star Wars was such a hit. Indiana Jones, it was the 3rd one, and For Your Eyes Only, obviously well into the James Bond canon. So to be in the ground level of such a hit as Game of Thrones, that's very unique, I guess, kind of from what maybe you were used to at that point.
Well, yes, they did come as a bit of a surprise, but one takes it really is another job, and you do your best with that particular job, and they happen to work out. Fiona's only experience was a good one. It's extraordinary how an actor's life can change just like that. I'd had about 6 months out of work, and we were getting desperate. My wife wasn't working either, and we were into selling the car stuff and talking about selling the house. And we have a very modest semi-detached house here in London, in the suburbs of London. Anyway, we were into that. And one weekend, about Wednesday, my agent rang and said, "Oh, I've got you a movie. Fantastic. It's a film, a Roman movie with Tony Hopkins, and it's being filmed in Greece at the moment. And they want you to go out in over a week's time." And I said, "Oh, fantastic, wonderful, wonderful. Very bad money, but it didn't matter. It was work and it was some money." So we arranged for my wife to come out with me and all that stuff. On the Friday, another call from my agent saying, "I'm terribly sorry, but the Screen Actors Guild is on strike. So all American films have been cancelled."
Wow.
So there I was, back at square one. We went into a sort of despair. The next morning, Saturday morning, when no business in our business happens at all, my agent rang from home and said, "They're interested in you. Get along now for a film about Alexander the Great, the great Greek king, and they're interested in you for playing the part of his father, Philip of Macedon, and they go out next week to Greece." I said, "The money's dreadful. I'll do it. So to cut the long story short, I went out to Corinth, which is where the film was being made, did all that, and was within a week of leaving it when my agent rang again in Spain, in Greece, and said, "They want you for the James Bond movie, for the leading." They want me? Well, they've got to meet you. Christ. I said, "Saturday, you've got to be there on Sunday." And I said, "I can't, I'm shooting on Saturday." And he said, "Julian, this is a Bond film. Get out of it." and licked the feet of the first assistant. And he was very understanding, and he managed to get rid of me at lunchtime on the Saturday, but only just in time for me to catch the plane to Frankfurt from Athens, which I was in all my makeup and everything. I was taking my makeup off in the car going to Athens airport, and Frankfurt, then to London, and then home. And my wife, who was in the theatre at the time, couldn't believe it when I walked in through the door. "You're supposed to be in Corinth." And yes, well, this is what happened. And the next morning I went for an interview, long interview, with Cubby Broccoli and his wife Dana, and everybody else on the film, it seemed. And I thought, this is a bit funny. And the costume chap, after my long talk, said, and the couple went off, Cubby and his wife went off into another room to talk. And Tony Nichols, the costume chap, said, "You've got it, Julian. I can tell that Dana wants you." And indeed, I got it. Got the part of the leading villain in a James Bond movie.
Wow.
The next plane out, and the next morning I was shooting again. And that evening, of course, I bought dinner for the whole
I
unit.
can imagine, yep.
Yeah. And a special dinner for that first assistant.
Wow.
And then, after that, all I had to do was fly the little bit of distance between Corinth and Corfu, which was a half-hour plane journey. And the first thing I did was be greeted with this brown envelope with £520 in it, which was my first week's per diem. I simply couldn't believe it. It was out of poverty into, wow, what is this? Filming. And I did my first day's filming, and when I got there, it was stuff on a boat. And I knew jolly well that if I'd screwed up, I'd be out on the next plane. But I wasn't. I didn't screw up, and I was kept on for the film, and that's the brief history of Julian Glover.
The rest is history. Your first taste, though, I believe, of the Bond franchise is, I believe, you did read for the role of James Bond back when Roger Moore was cast back in Live and Let Die. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there were half a dozen of us up for it. We had to go and do a film test, and we had to do a scene from it with a gun and everything. And I wasn't very good. I knew I wasn't going to get it. I didn't quite know where to put my head for it. And I wasn't very good. And of course, anyway, at the end of all that, we all knew that Roger Moore was going to get it because he just finished with The Saint, and he was a dead ringer for James Bond. And indeed, he did get it, and quite right too. Yeah, so I was a contender, but that's all.
Imagine how your life would have been had you gotten that role, Julian. I can imagine it'd be a bit more than $520 in an envelope if you had have got the live and let die money, perhaps.
It was better than $520, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Which it must be interesting because obviously, you know, it's everybody says playing a villain's more fun. And I mean, look, I'm not an actor, but if you're not going to be James Bond, the next best thing is to be a Bond villain, surely. So when you kind of cast in that role as Christados, you must be thinking back to that going, well, okay, never got James Bond, but I'm a Bond villain. This is going to be pretty fun.
Yes. The only problem with playing villains, which as you realise has been the cornerstone of my professional life, is that you don't get to do the sequel.
Mm. That is a little bit of a problem.
You're not there at the end of a Bond film.
Unless you're Blofeld, right? If you're Blofeld, then maybe. But you often get recast if you're Blofeld. I mean, Blofeld was sort of in For Your Eyes Only, legally not allowed to be called Blofeld, but, you know, bald man drop down chimney, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, modern James Bond, the villain often can survive. Maybe Christopher Walken did. Not Christopher Walken, Christoph Waltz. Different Christoph, of course, for that. But
usually they want the villain to die.
True.
The audience want the villain to get it.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
And a wonderful death, my best death ever, of course, was Indiana Jones, which is just fantastic death. And that was, I have a little story about that. That was 2 days shooting, 2 days to shoot that 16-second sequence. And a couple of months or maybe a month before the filming started, I went down and they made like a death mask of my face out of plaster of Paris, and there it was. And they used that as the basis for the other work they did later, you know, the pieces they put on and prosthetics. And as I say, it took 2 days to film 16 seconds. Oh, and the way the hair, remember, you probably won't remember, but some of your listeners or viewers will. There's a moment when my hair grows like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was done, shot in reverse. There was a chap in front of me, and he had the wig, and it was all down. And they shot in reverse, and he pulled it like that. And it went up his head, and that's the way they did it, shot it in reverse. Anyway, that plaster of Paris face, which by the end of the movie, I looked about 180, the props department said, "Do you want this?" I said, "Want it?" They said, "Yeah, you can take it away." "No, we don't want it." And I said, "Oh, well, okay. Thanks very much." I took it home. I showed it to Isla, my wife, and she said, "Oh, Christ, that's horrible."
What, are you going to mount it on the wall, above the bed?
In the garage, I said. So I put it in the garage. A few months later, we were clearing out the garage, you know, like you do. And I came in, I said, "Look, I've got this." It's disgusting. Disgusting. Bin it. So I bin it. About 3 years later, I was telling a dealer, I think I was in Atlanta, about this. He said, "You binned it.
Oh.
You binned that mask." I said, "Yes." He said, "Julian, if you had that mask with you now, I would give you $35,000 for it."
Oh.
Since when I haven't thrown anything away.
Wow. Jeez. I can't imagine like your helmet from Star Wars, like what that would fetch. I mean, if you kept that, I mean, that's probably going to get more than 35 grand, isn't it?
What?
Your helmet from Empire Strikes Back when you're in the... Yeah.
Would be.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I put a lot of myself up for auction early last year, thinking in lockout, where the hell do I want all this stuff? So a lot went up for auction, and my badge that I had as General Veers, which is about that wide and about that long, with different colours on it, I sold for £8,000.
Wow.
Oh.
£8,000.
It was probably
just
more than
for
you
that.
got for the movie. I think you got paid more for that than you did to get paid by George Lucas, right?
Completely more. I think we got 1,000, or maybe, yeah, 1,000 for that week's work, 5 days work we got for it. So 8 times just for that one object. It's a weird world we live in. So the dealers say never throw anything out because you never know there's someone who's going to want it. And there usually is some damn silly little thing which you hadn't thought about. You know, they'll pay you a few pounds for. Well, okay.
Well, I mean,
at my age, you welcome these things. You know, you need the money.
Well, the fan community for movies like this has just exploded. And, you know, I've talked about on this show before that a couple of years ago, you were scheduled to make an appearance at the Winnipeg Comic-Con, but unfortunately had to cancel. It might have been Game of Thrones, who knows? But, you know, now the one thing that through this lockdown that seems to have exploded is these online Comic-Cons. So I have to imagine, I mean, for you doing that, being able to be in your living room, that's got to be great. And just the amount of people, like I can connect with people who would never come to a Winnipeg Comic-Con almost on every single weekend.
Yeah, I've never done a full convention on a big Comic-Con. I've never done a full one with thousands of people, but I've done quite a lot of this sort of interview, which then goes out for sale. And I make some money out of it. It's actually, those have saved my life during this time of lockdown, because I've done quite a lot of them. This sort of thing, you know, if I was doing it commercially, would bring me in, I don't know, $200 or something, which, you know, pays for your coffee, doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Very good coffee.
If you're into coffee.
But
also, I've noticed a tremendous explosion on people writing to me for my autographs and things. I get a watch like that every week now.
Wow.
Which is a terrible bore to do, but you do it because it's part of your job. And I'm in the middle of a pile now, which is one of the reasons I can't talk to you all day.
Yeah, no, it's same with us actually, Julian. Colin and I get lots of autograph requests as well. So, you know,
Tons.
Tons.
Yeah, so you know what it's like.
Yeah, we're very, very popular. But it is interesting because I read an interesting stat that you are the only actor to have ever appeared in the James Bond, Star Wars, and Indiana Jones franchise, which each in their own self, of course, have massive fan bases. And you add Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, everything else that you've done.
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who. I mean, you know, these, massive. Two
Yeah.
Doctor Who's. So when you're getting those cards to sign, are they mainly a picture of General Viz? Are they mainly a picture of Christados? Like, is one fan community bigger or sort of all equal?
All of them. All those main, Star Wars, For Your Eyes Only, I get them. In fact, all the films you mentioned, Game of Thrones, all of them. And you sign maybe 350, 400. They don't charge a tremendous amount, but it's helpful. Thank you very much indeed. And as I said, it's helped a great deal recently. But the cards are a separate thing. They're a commercial deal. People are going to make a lot of money out of your signature, and so you do a financial thing. With the autographs, you do them. You send them out, and sometimes they send you money, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes they don't even send an envelope. Sometimes they don't even send a photograph. Which annoys me a bit. There's no way I can say, send me a bloody photograph and I'll sign it. You can't do that. And so you do it anyway, because everyone assumes, of course, that actors are terribly rich. And some actors are. I shouldn't, Tom Hanks is all right.
He's done all right for himself, I can imagine.
One of the mill actor, if he's done quite well, has done quite well. I mean, I've earned my living and that of my family with my wife at it, and we have a comfortable life, comfortable middle-class life, but nothing flashy or anything. And our salaries are often zero. Sometimes we'll do work just for the sake of doing the work. And I've done several things like that during this lockdown. It's just to keep your hand in. And when you're doing it, you do one work day on a film, you come back feeling, oh, yes, that's why I'm here. this is what I'm for here, to do this thing called acting. Mm-hmm. And anyway, but you're quite right. There has been a tremendous explosion of interest through emails, through the media, and through the posts as well. Yeah.
And we know you don't. We know that you don't have all day with us here, but I can't, not ask you really quickly about Doctor Who. As you mentioned, you had one brush with Doctor Who in the '60s, I think, with Patrick Troughton, but then City of Death, which I just rewatched last year, and I was like blown away. I woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't sleep. I put on City of Death, thinking, well, I'll be able to fall asleep, and I was up till 5 a.m. That story has not only lived now for, I mean, it was voted, I think, multiple times as the greatest Doctor Who story of all time. And, for television, to live on probably at the same level as some of those movies, I mean, it's just fantastic.
Well, that's very good to hear you say that. I have to say, it has gone into the classic Doctor Who spectrum. It was written, of course, by a really professional actor, a writer, and had a very good cast. And my part was wonderful, going through all history being different things. And then ending up as that green spaghetti with an iron.
Do you have that mask still?
Yeah, no, I don't have that. Oh, that'd be good to have. Yeah, that'd be good.
I'm sure your wife would love that one.
She wouldn't have minded that one, but it doesn't look like me.
Just put it on this weekend, Julian. That's it.
The first Doctor Who was in the very first series of ever of Doctor Who with William Hartnell, the original, and they were more sort of regular stories, not so magic in those days. There weren't any Daleks in the story that I did. I played Richard the Lionheart, the great English king, who has been proved since is far from being a great man, but he's gone down in English legend as being a great man. But it was him, and a lovely actress called Jean Marsh played my sister. Jean Marsh of Upstairs, Downstairs, maybe some of your readers may remember that.
Yep.
And that was lovely, except that I'm afraid that William Hartnell didn't like us very much. And no, he just didn't. He thought we were lardies. We thought we were actor poshos, and he didn't like us, so he wasn't very nice to us. But we enjoyed being with each other and doing the story, which was a fun story. I found out later, funnily enough, that I wore a sort of a hempen, rather nice green jacket thing in that. And very nice and royal. And many years later, I went to a friend of mine's flat who was in the film of Beckett. Remember that film, Beckett?
Yeah, Peter O'Toole.
Yeah, right, you got it. And he played the young English boy in it. He had lots of photographs of the film in his study. And in one of them, Peter O'Toole was wearing my jacket.
Wow.
Except that I wore his jacket, of course. It was in the costumiers somewhere, and they thought it was right for me. So I felt, I touched royalty there.
It counts. It counts, I think. Yeah. I'd love to know, with the role of Christados, what's so unique about For Your Eyes Only is that halfway through the film, you kind of have this quick pull situation where, we think that you're the good guy, that you're working with Bond, and then of course ultimately you're the villain throughout that role. And of course any actor will say, and you're playing the villain, we know are the villain, but you don't play it as a villain. You always assume that your motives are good, of course, throughout that. But does that make it, how is that playing a role like Christados, where for the audience perspective, we don't know you're really evil, at least in our eyes, until halfway through? Does that make it a different way of playing a character like that? Or do you still play it the same? Because as I said, you kind of play a villain, not assuming that you're a villain all the time.
You play it for the motives the character has for doing it. And he wanted money in order to go on properly protecting and promoting that skater.
Baby.
And who was his protege. And it's not until later in the film that he gets a bit bad with her, when he gets frustrated. But that was my main object in it, and I was willing to help the Russians in whatever way I helped, in that sort of typewriter thing, attack, whatever it's called.
The ATAC, yeah.
What was it called?
The ATAC.
ATAC.
Yeah. ATAC, yeah. I was able to do that because, I wanted to do it because I wanted money from the Russians. And exactly the same motivation as in For Your Eyes Only. No, in Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Walter Donovan needs the money in order to find the secret of eternal life. And I ask you now, both of you, what would you do for the secret of eternal life?
Well, I'd hang out with Lynn Holly Johnson if that's an option. I'd hang out with BB. Like, can we? You can have the money. I'll have Lynn Holly Johnson. Does that work?
Holly Johnson, wasn't she lovely?
Oh, yeah.
She came over from the States when Roger died, and he had a wonderful celebration at the Pinewood Studios. Took all afternoon. It was just absolutely fantastic tribute. And she came all the way from the States for that. Hardly changed at all, little Holly. Such a bonny girl and such a nice young woman. She was tremendously popular, and we all adored her. Yes, well, that was what I had to, like in Game of Thrones, you hold something inside yourself, which is the reason you're doing things. You know, even Hitler didn't do things for no reason. Mm-hmm. You might hate the reasons, but he did horrible things. But
he thought he was doing it for the right reasons. I mean, obviously, history frowns upon that, but he thought he was.
Hitler himself was not someone who relished in torturing human beings. To play that is a quite different thing. To play someone who gets pleasure, sometimes almost sexual pleasure, from hurting someone very badly and seeing the results of their hurt. Now, that's another thing entirely from being Mr. Big. Mr. Big closes his eyes to all that, if he can, and just takes the rewards. He's got a different motive. But it sounds very arch and very actory, but I am an actor, so why shouldn't I talk like an actor? You have to find the bottom of the blow. You have to, which doesn't show. Well, I suppose it does, but you don't consciously play either a villain or a good guy. But you're a good guy. Chris Dartos was a nice chap, good chap to have dinner with, and a good conversationalist. Had this rivalry, of course, with Topol, but that's something which can happen in any businesses. People have rivalries. And in Indiana Jones, he was someone who had this extraordinary ambition to find this secret and to find the Holy Grail, really. As I say, I challenge anyone not to be sorely tempted to do anything rather naughty in order to get that. And he didn't. However, it did end up with me being the only person to have shot Sean Connery on screen, to have killed Sean Connery on screen. And if it wasn't for that damn juice, which I didn't drink, he'd be dead now. And of course, old Sean is dead now. I knew Sean many, many years ago when I did a wonderful Shakespeare series on television in England called An Age of Kings, which we did in black and white in those old days as 50-minute episodes. We did it like a soap, and we went through the history plays from one to beginning to the end. And Sean Connery was employed to come in and play a wonderful part, which I wanted very badly, but had to admit that Sean was much better, called Hotspur. And if you think of the name Hotspur, you can see what Sean could do with it. Yeah. And he was absolutely fantastic. And that's when we first got to know each other. And we knew each other peripherally, you know, at parties and things like that. I had Sean, I had a little chat. And then we got to work on the film, and it was very nice to be together with him. And then he was able to properly introduce me to Harrison, and we got on very well too. well, why not?
Rest is history. Yeah, it's interesting actually because I believe you have worked with 4 of the Bond actors as well. You're mentioning Sean, obviously Roger and For Your Eyes Only, and you've worked with Timothy Dalton and Pierce Brosnan as well. So, and we were trying to work this out that you might be outside of someone like Desmond Llewellyn. One of the only actors who will work with that many of the Bond actors. You need to find something to do with Daniel Craig and George Lazenby, Julian. I feel like you need to tick off the list here so you can say you've worked with all 6 of them.
Well, I'm not going to do that now.
You never know. Daniel Craig's about to retire as Bond. Like, he might start doing some of, things like a Game of Thrones prequel or something like that, or who knows?
A reunion, perhaps.
Yeah. And George Lazenby's not doing much. I'm sure he'll, they need to do something like that. And maybe, you need to find your agent to say, like, hey, I need to find something to do with Daniel Craig and George Lazenby. It's killing me that I haven't worked with these 2 Bond actors. The other 4...
that would complete the quadruple.
The sets. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know how you are collecting things. Like, I, for one, if that was me, I love collecting things and I can't leave things uncollected. I'd be like, make it happen somehow. Daniel Craig, George Lazenby, get them in a movie with me, a TV show, anything, an audio book, something. I need to work with them.
So I can boast about it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't think there would be any, outside of, the Broccolis and people who have worked on, behind the scenes. But I would love a listener to be able to correct me if I'm wrong, that there has been somebody there who has acted with every single one of them, because that would be a unique little statistic.
Yes, I'm trying to think. However, you're not going to kick me into doing anything about it.
No. Damn it, I thought I had that sway. Not quite.
I worked with all the James Bonds. That's absolutely right. Yes, I have. Except for him, yeah. Mind you, we don't count him. No. I'm afraid. sorry, George.
Oh, poor George. Fellow Australian.
He was from out of left field he came, and that film should never have happened anyway. Well, because it was a rogue film, nothing to do with Cubby Broccoli and all those. Anyway.
We know that you have a big stack of autographs, get back to signing, and video one-on-ones, all the stuff you're doing. But is there anything before we let you go that you want to plug? Any big projects coming up that people should get excited about?
No. I'm going to be doing another small film. Well, no, I hope it's going to be a big film about the first person to ever put on boxing gloves, having been a bare-knuckled fighter before that, a champion of England and champion of the world for a time, and who had his eye knocked out in a boxing match and came back and continued for another 5 years as a professional boxer, winning every single contest.
Wow!
Until he was finally beaten, and he gave up with a good grace because he had got with one eye. He did that, and I play one of those lords who fops around, providing the money for these boxers who come from absolutely nowhere, and but they happen to be very, very good at that. So that's coming up. I was stopped from doing something for the BBC, which came right at the beginning of the lockdown, first lockdown, but I was able to finish it in January of this year, so that was okay. Of course, the work has dropped off tremendously anyway for a chap of 86. You don't. There aren't a lot of parts around, and if they're played by Michael Gambon probably, and that's the way it goes. But I'm okay. I'm okay, and I've had an extraordinarily lucky and unfortunately happy private life. My first marriage was, as I said, was happy up to a point, and then it went wrong. But my second marriage has been absolutely perfect, and as I say, we are very fond of each other. Every evening we have the same routine of a glass of wine, sitting quietly by ourselves, talks us having a day over. Not that there's much to have over these days, is there? It's a day.
Yeah.
What happened today? Well, I got up and had a piece of toast and a half a piece of toast. Oh, that's good. Yes, I did that too.
Tonight might be different. You might be able to talk about those fantastic podcast hosts that you had a great conversation with, who are fantastic, and I recommend them to anyone. That could be tonight's conversation, Julian.
Not at all.
No. Yeah. You did say you have paint drying as well. Like that's the thing too. So yeah, maybe fourth on the list after those cards and the paint and the toast. We'll take that. Fourth on the list by Julian Glover. Yeah, well, that's a pretty good review for us.
Listen, I think we've done, haven't we?
We are pretty much done, Julian. I will say though, it has been a pleasure to chat with you and obviously go over some great memories from your career.
I must say.
Yeah. Just a bit. But we really appreciate your time, and we wish you all the best of luck with everything coming forward.
My regards to all your listeners and viewers. Okay, God bless.